So
Okay.
let's see. I say
Because I'm
place to
looking at the graph,
start.
right? Like I look at the fall. So are we look trying to find where we have just the number of enrollments, or do we
So
have overlapping, or?
So yeah, as a place to start, so the first tool that kind of the Tableau we have, one of the things we have for checking for pairings is the co-enrollment tool. And so what that is, so for instance, if we're looking at, so if I put in, say, Matt 141 here, it'll show me, and I kind of limited it to only hybrid and in person because I think that's what I saw in your schedule you did. I actually, you have an online too, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
But I limited it to that just to
Yeah,
see
I wouldn't
because,
want to do online. I want to do in
yeah,
person.
it takes learning communities online is something we haven't explored as much. So I was going to lean it. So yeah, but for 141, so this tool basically says for the fall semester, fall 2024, if we're looking at MAT 141 enrollments, what other courses are the most commonly taken at the same time, where students are co-enrolled in both courses,
Mm-hmm.
even if there is no official learning community? And so if we're looking at that and we've got it limited to where both of those are either in person or hybrid combinations, we can see, we look and go, okay, so English 101 at at a CGC has about 50 co-enrollments with MAT 141 in the fall semester. Now, and then we didn't have any, it looks like we didn't have any hybrid or in-person co-enrollments in spring. I'm wondering what happened there, but last spring. But if we go back a term, we can see there's a little bit of 141 in spring 23, still not as much as the fall. So we can look at,
Wait, so does that mean like there's someone already pairing? Or
no, it means that, so it's one of those things like of all the sections that are offered of 141 and all the sections that are offered of these classes, there are students enrolled in both of
both
them,
of them? That
but
makes
it's
it.
random. It's like it maybe they found a way to line up their schedules, but the teachers don't know they're in the same class. And so what we're kind of doing is trying to optimize student random schedules,
Mm-hmm.
if you're thinking from the scheduling side. So where we kind of create help students who might be having similar interests or taking similar courses get into the same courses so that they're not just each course isn't kind of randomly they do it because it fits their schedule, and maybe there are 10 students in a variety of 141 classes at like 8:30 in the morning across the campus or across
Mm-hmm.
both campuses, and then they all want to go to like the next English 101 course at 11, but there's like three or four options there, so then they're kind of all kind of crossing paths but not being in the same place. Since they're all wanting the same course, they might be the same major or just be able to kind of have a shared experience because their schedules work out.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that allows them to build better, stronger cohorts.
Yeah.
So the co-enrollment tool says of all the randomness, we might be able to maximize or capitalize on students who are already trying to get these courses if we line up a block, or some of them, if we line up a block of classes that they can get into. And some of them may want the pairings. Like with the English 101, Matt 151s in the fall, we've had we've been able to basically get 65, 66 students in two full LCs at like 30 or 33.
So who's doing right now the learning communities from the math division?
So Matt 151 and 187, I've done LCs with Pam and Casey.
Okay.
And so we've been doing that. Pam and I have been doing it since like 2018, 2019. And then Casey, like we expanded, Casey was interested. And I think because Pam took the chairship. So now we have like a full Monday stack of two LCs. Pam teaches one, Casey teaches the other, and it's all the same content. And I'm just there the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also trying to get, like, I might try and pull in another English 101 instructor just to balance it out and get more people involved.
Mm-hmm.
But what we haven't ever had is anyone covering 140s.
Mm-hmm.
Sasha was considering it, but then took on something. I can't remember what. And I've talked a little bit with Shannon, and she has a little bit of variety of
Yeah.
math courses. But there's a lot of opportunity with the different courses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think the one with the least number of enrollments, I think was 141 or the brief calculus. If we're looking at like what they mean. So this one that has like 50 students, I think your cap is, what's it going to be, 25 or 28 next year? or does it
It's
vary?
like 28, or
Yeah.
now it's been lower, right? So I think it's 28.
Okay. So then if we're looking at 141 and these are hybrid in persons, depending on how many sections there are, that might not be like I've been able to build an LC with chemistry with less where there was like 35 and we got to like 38 and ended up having a chemistry class with 38 in it. That was like 2016. And then we kind of kept rolling it. But math, so that one might not be the best one. The best option, I think, when we're looking at it was the MAT 142.
So which one is on the 213 is not?
We can we'll go to 13 first actually, because if the we can talk through it because part of it's also like um it can help just to put all first because sometimes it won't let me select the course. So if I go mat 213, sometimes it's and so part of this is kind of talking through and exploring the options and kind of helping you get a sense of how we think about building learning communities sometimes. So if we look at your brief calculus, there's actually not bad numbers with a couple courses. And so if we're looking at that, um, it's possible if we're looking for, if you wanted something other than English, English was the best for like 142. But CIS 105 has some possibilities in the fall with 213. That's like the Intro to Computers class. And then Accounting 111 might have enough to fill a class. Accounting 111 in the fall only has 37. I would not start there as your first LC. I'd rather you start with the low hanging fruit unless you just really don't want to do one of these other combos. Or we can't find the best teacher. So with learning communities, we usually have we've been trying to do it more data driven so that we have more likelihood of success and that
Yeah.
kind of thing long term,
Yeah.
and having the class sizes that you need and stuff.
Mhm.
We have sometimes done like a Field of Dreams, if you know the movie, but that whole idea of like if you build it, they will show up, and that's kind of been hit or miss. And it's gotten better because we have done a whole marketing revamp for learning communities, so we'll be able to promote them. So if we're looking at that though, if you're like, I really want to do brief calculus, like that's the one. I would probably look closer. I would either look for a fall CIS 105 if you wanted in person or hybrid, or a fall possibly accounting 111 or English 102. So those are probably the best if you absolutely wanted to do brief calculus. But if you just are like trying to get your feet wet and wanted to start, I think your 142 class has the very best of numbers comparatively. So like in the fall, we have a pool of 230 students who are already regularly kind of overlapping in there. And if we go back a year, it was like 150. If we go back, COVID as it is. But those numbers are steadily increasing. So this fall we had over 200 people. That's a good chunk of students if we're just trying to get 20 or 30, right?
Yeah.
So if we're playing the numbers game. Spring, it's got a possibility with over 70 who are usually doing in person or hybrids. And that number has been kind of growing as well. It's not as good a number, but it's still it's possible. And so so those are if we're trying to get you fully linked, which is only one part of the possibilities. So, um, but so what do you? So that's just kind of the first, and that's just looking straight into the numbers. So
the numbers, right? But
yeah,
then it's like the setup, like so then like I mean, depending on what semester you do it, like how do you do the prep? Like how is it? I mean, what's the preparation? How does the class look like? Right?
yeah. So we have what I call the on ramp to full LC. So at the very like the way the college has kind of encouraged it in the past for most of our history has been try to get people into fully integrated, fully co-taught course LCs. That's like the most extreme version, and that takes a lot more labor and lift and getting the enrollments right and everybody involved. And so that's usually what I've been doing with Pam and them and others. But we also we have other possibilities that kind of step up to that. So we don't have to do fully integrated, which usually means like both teachers in both classes the whole time. That's fully integrated and fully co-taught. You can also have teachers share a grade book and share a couple different assignments across the course. For fully integrated, you could also have people share the whole Canvas shell. And so the process for developing that, it usually takes some time if you're going to that extent. If you want to ease into it, you could, instead of stepping straight into something at that high of an integration, you could go what's called linked or loose linked. And so that's where you have the same cohort of students enrolled in both classes. You both know about it. You don't do shared grade books and you don't co-teach, but you intentionally try and lean the content or inflect or contextualize the content toward the other class. And so you have a few you have some ongoing conversations before and building up to the semester where you develop the materials so that it works with the other course. And so some of the benefits of that is like if you and the other course are both teaching research or both engaging with community problems, like if you did it with if you did your 142, and I actually probably want to ask you what that looks like in a minute, but like what's the actual content of your course? Because that'll probably be good. But if 142 is looking at kind of the more practical life skills of math kind of thing, sorry, that's my best interpretation of it. And I know people in English 101 or 102 want students writing about community service or writing about a community problem. Well, maybe there's a way to overlap some of the outcomes of the class. So that the two classes together give students a better, more reinforced picture, and they get multiple perspectives and teachers intentionally kind of trying to line up schedules so that it's not like you have a math test the same week someone else would usually have an exam or a full of writing a project. So it makes the course more a bit smoother for students. Um, but it might like if we want to brainstorm it a little bit, like what's kind of the focus of 142 for you? What's it look like?
So like we covered kind of like five topics,
Mm-hmm.
and like each of us do it like different order. Doesn't necessarily have to go in the same order, right? Because we start like usually it's we do unit analysis. Um, I'll tell you my order. Usually, what I do is I do geometry because I do a project um, where they have to build their house and do dimension and like do carpet, do flooring, and they have to buy the cost.
Okay.
And then I do unit analysis. I go to probability, and then after I give them an exam, then I go to statistics, basic statistics. Then I get into more like the calculations of statistics, where like the first part is more like they're going over like what is the sample, what is the statistics, what is the survey,
Mm.
what's a good source, and then like the next one is like doing calculations like mean, median, mode, like
Gotcha.
measures of center and standard deviation, and then I go to right now I'm doing finance because I also have another project on finance, and then I end the semester with linear and exponential and like um, finding like changes like absolute change in between like years or so then what I try to do is I try to bring like examples like what we could see from real life
Mm-hmm.
so that we can analyze that so that we're trying to be like here's the math but we want them to be like practical and be able
Anchored.
when they see it right that they can know okay what does that mean even if like they're not very like math oriented at least they have a little an intuitive idea of what's going on
Mm-hmm.
like and we don't get too in detail in the math but more like what does it mean when you see these percentages or what do you see when you see like these margin of errors with your surveys.
Gotcha.
um
On the practical examples, do you have data sets like topics that you like to lean into for those, or is there a common topic throughout? Like you mentioned the like almost like home repair, right, and that sort of thing.
uh
Or you said materials in the house, and I wasn't sure.
materials is more like I bring examples that I see right online like
Mm-hmm.
for the stats like if I find a survey an interesting survey I will bring that in um like right now like the only thing that for geometry right like I I got this project from Roberta because she does that with her students so I just modify a little where they have to build their dream house and
Okay. Yeah.
they have to like create their floor plan and create their rooms, and then they have to go buy carpet, they have to go buy uh, like flooring, and it kind of gives them a sense of dimensions because I feel like, like someone might draw a house and that's like 500 square feet, and they have like three rooms and two
Mhm.
bedrooms, and like, and then I tell them, well, do you
Japanese style
plan to
houses,
sleep on these
yeah.
rooms?
Yeah. I'm like,
Right?
those are like bunks.
I'm like, how are you like thinking, like,
Yeah.
so I feel like sometimes a couple students don't even have a sense of dimensions, right? Like, okay, like,
Like we're looking at numbers, but what is the spatial
yeah,
feel of that?
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. So then I feel that gives them a little bit more sense, and just like, whatever their dream house. And then the finance one, the project for that one
Mm.
is, we worked it out from when we went to you guys' high practices
Yeah, yeah,
workshop, right?
yeah.
We had just ideas in a draft, right? At that time we didn't have like an actual project put together, so we worked on that with summer with Sasha. Just, well, actually, I worked on it over the summer, and then we met with her in August, and we made a two-part project. And part one is doing the budgeting,
Mm.
which is the part that we kind of did with you guys, that we wanted them to make sure they have an idea of how they budget, how much money they're making with a career, how much money actually goes to IRS, because then they don't realize how much money
Yeah.
goes there.
The tax breakdowns and stuff.
Yeah, and then we also have them do part two, which is finding either a practical car
Mm.
or a dream car, right? Because a dream, it will be like in thousands usually their payments if they were to finance it, right?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, so if only I'll use my class though. I can think of like I've taught with CIS 105, and so um, like that kind of thing showing up in CIS 105 could be the computer science instructor, like letting them build their databases or their PowerPoints based on presentations of the stuff that they're doing the math in your class too.
Mm-hmm.
But for if it's like, since the best pairing for 142 is like a writing course, like that might look like, I've done things where it's like with chemistry, I did a household products or household chemicals project, and the first step was them like creating a collage documenting everywhere writing showed up that had where it was connected to chemicals. So you'd get pictures of cereal box labels and the ingredients list, or oil from their garage, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so but then they would have to go and write a project that overlapped. And so say they're doing this, um, like trying to design a home space, like it's not uncommon for writing teachers to have students write like literacy narratives, or think about, like I know Michelle Glarum, who's newer, and Kate Hope both do like kind of the rhetoric of space, and like so they'll, and Colleen does stuff with like the ETC garden, but all that to say, like you could have students engaging with the dimensions and then also like doing a almost an analysis of like what is it, how does that space, like the size of it or the texture of it or the things in it, make it easier or harder to do their writing or to read or to just live. And so it can be, so writing kind of has, we have our core content that we have, like we can choose examples from a variety of contexts. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's really easy for for the two courses, if they wanted to like aim at a theme or a topic, or a series of topics, like if the first one is, finances in the home, or spatial reasoning or that sort of thing,
Yeah.
then they write papers that might reinforce from a slightly different angle, kind of analyzing that. If they're doing car, like if it's their dream car, it's like, well, we might have them do research on it too, or we might do something like like I've done a talking cars project where I had in the CIS 105, they took pictures of everywhere writing showed up and had to analyze the different special writing systems and things like, what is PSI and why would that matter? Or what are RPMs, or what type of ratings are required, or
What do you mean writing show up?
so like if you go to your car, where are their words and why what do they do?
Oh,
So kind
okay.
of the rhetoric of of like, and we can talk a little bit about writing technologies there, because it could be, as far as, and this is just my specific content that the way I lean the course, but we might ask them to like, what does it change about experiencing reading or writing to if it's reading dials in a LED readout versus an old school speedometer. And that's getting a little like in the weeds. A student might just want to talk about like the aesthetics of the car and why they find it pretty.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of more if it's more an introductory or just starting paper. But when they're doing, but we always like we're supposed to have library research modules, and so they could be doing research on common house sizes, or they could even like it may lean into like an architecture style essay where they talk about where they go and look up like the psychology of room spaces if it's topical, and then say, okay, what is that, like how does that change the way people experience the room? Because in writing there's this whole thing called ambient rhetoric or place-based rhetoric, and so it's like, does just the feel of the room change things? Do the types of technologies for communicating change the way you do stuff in the room?
Mm-hmm.
And so that could also get at your like, well, if we're trying to understand spatial reasoning, we have to think about how is it being used and what happens if it's meant to be used one way, like, and but but we end up designing a room with a different purpose. And so that actually gets to like rhetorical purpose and why someone designs something or communicates a certain way. So there's a little bit of overlap. There's a lot of potential is really what I'm, because you have some really practical anchored things that you have students analyzing. And I know one of the big sides, the humanities side of an English 101 or 102 is really like there's tons of people who do space-based like community space-based analysis or community project or community problem solving,
Mm-hmm.
problem solution essays and that kind of thing. So there's potential there is all I'm saying. And so one of the things that can be fun is like if we looked at like the outcomes of the courses,
Mm-hmm.
we could try and say, okay, where do we see outcomes that overlap? So let me see. How are we doing on time? Are you okay on time still?
I think about 10 minutes.
Okay. So let me see. Do. I can't remember I used to have it linked, but actually,
With the 141, what I've done is I've done the honors project, right, where I just emphasize in the statistics part where they have to go collect data and do analysis. That's their project basically, and then they have to choose their topic.
okay.
So
And
yeah.
so so if we're looking, say, so what's really good about that is if you're already having them do a project, it means that when they write an essay and you've got kind of an integrated or a learning community set up, if you guys decide to both kind of put points into the same project, one of the things we'll do is have like I have part of the rubric and the other person has their part of the rubric. So I might go in and my part of the rubric is giving points for how are they using evidence to make their argument. Are they, structuring their paper in a way that makes sense? Are they using the technology in a meaningful way to like incorporate images or tables or graphs
Mm-hmm.
visually effectively? And then you might come in and say, um, is the math accurate? Are they, you could also look at how they're analyzing things, but through the math lens and say, are they drawing in the things from your course they're supposed to? So they get one assignment that feeds both classes. And so it, it could either be a more substantial assignment with different focuses because you're getting kind of, they're supposed to be doing like 6 hours here and 10 hours there, or whatever it is, depending on how the project plays out. But that's one of the fun of like co-creating with other people or thinking about a project that could lean into both classes outcomes, right? So if you're thinking like I have to get them to consider, to analyze and kind of get the spatial reasoning stuff, and then we frame it, and then the writing class has them thinking about, okay, what's the context that the stuff's happening in, who's the audience for their paper, how are they going to structure it so it makes sense. Like that's the stuff that's like the how they're presenting it, and you're focused on whether it's actually accurate the way they're approaching it, if that makes sense. So sometimes you can kind of have these flips or these mashups that work really well. um, that's what one of the things we do in the math classes. We do like the math for kids. In the chemistry class, we do chemistry for kids books. And so they'll be going through and like trying to use different technologies to generate and format texts. And they'll basically be teaching, like grabbing a math lesson, transforming it into a digital story that they can, like a Google Slides presentation, and then print it out. And then they'll go share that with little kids. So it helps them kind of learn the
Mm-hmm.
math content
Yeah.
and present it, and then also at the same time think about who their audience is and how to present that math topic in language or in a tone, or with explanation that the audience will be able to understand. So that's one of the things we do with them at 151. Like we've had books about Croc and AROC and the quadratic function, and they've embedded it into like story narrative for third graders and that kind of thing. So it allows you to kind of play a little more. And sometimes it's if you're looking like sometimes one of the things that's nice about English 101 is because we're a gen ed, we can kind of be very flexible. So if you look at like the different types of courses nationwide, it's like there are themes around everything. There are English 101 courses that lean toward food or toward finance or toward STEM. And so there's a lot of options that, and then, or art, and trying to figure out where the overlap is. So if you find a teaching partner that's like, we both kind of like this thing, we could do those. And maybe they are already excited about the things you're already doing, and they find a way to lean their course in that direction while still accomplishing the outcomes. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking at it, we had talked about like there being an on-ramp. And yes, fully integrated's like the optimal when it comes to benefits, but there's still benefits all along the way. So you could do a loose linked, you could warm up with kind of a low stakes connection where you don't even have the same students. You could just be like, I've got my class, they've got theirs. And what we'll do is we'll do like a professor swap one day. And so if I have students talking about one thing, that's completely separate from yours, class wise, but like it'd be nice for them to be able to think through research from a statistics point of view. Well, you could come teach statistics that day, like you would in your class. And then if there's something in your class that it's like, I just wish they had clearer writing in this area, or would be able to think about like start to finish, like how they present the information. I could come in and teach organization or whatever the need is. I remember one semester after Mike and I had been teaching the chemistry and writing one for a while, I kind of asked him, because we were trying to grow further than we had. I'm like, what's the thing you hate about teaching? Like, what's a thing that you really just don't like teaching, or you feel like falls flat when you teach it? And he said he didn't like teaching chemistry nomenclature, which is literally the language of chemistry. So I'm sitting there being a writing teacher, and I'm like, he's like, it's just memorizing the names. I'm like, no, there's a whole system behind this. And so like we ended up like, I'm like, I'll just take that day and I'll teach that one for you. And we found other ways where he was able to talk about genre when he talked about different chemical equations and the structure of things. So all that to say, there, sometimes recognizing a possible overlap of expertise, either where you just swap classrooms for a day and you just teach each other's class, even if it's different students, or if you've got them scheduled at the same time, like you bring your classes together into one of the big auditoriums, and then you kind of have a dialogue about like, what does math approach research with, what is writing, or whatever class it is. And so those are actually really easy, like starter partnerships. Because it's more like a common intellectual experience than it is a fully linked, like we got to get scheduling involved kind of thing. There's one other layer in there that's like what we call, like we've considered the idea of like a pocket LC, where you've got your normal classes, but we have a situation where there's like low enrollment, like in the top paired courses. Say you were really interested in like leaning into the CIS 105, we could start with like 8 students who are co-enrolled in both, and you wouldn't teach your class any different in one sense, but those 8 would have both classes together. So then at a minimum they're co-enrolled and they get both the benefit of being in both classes together. And then if you wanted to push it a little further, you could say for those 8 students, their assignment is going to be a shared assignment across the courses, because we know they're getting this, and then so you have something like, that's why pocket LC. So it's a little more, it's a bit of work because it's only for part of the class.
Yeah.
Or the other side of it is like you use examples that are more relevant if they're in the other class, but the other students don't lose value from, right? So if the other class knows you're going to use an example, it gets reinforced, and it's still a good example even if people don't know that. So that's the other way to handle like a pocket LC if you're not sure on enrollments. Those are the that's the on-ramp. So there's all that to say. Like there's variety here in how you can do it
Yeah.
as a it is a high impact practice because it for two main reasons when it comes to like students being co-enrolled, even if the teachers aren't connecting content, they have a social sense of belonging benefit. And if the teacher, if students aren't co-enrolled, but teachers are trying to cross the streams on the content, sometimes just inflecting it toward the other class or kind of contextualizing the same type of content helps student anchor academically. So when you have both of those going on in the best version, it's like maximized. But any of those along the way, it can be really good for students. And it also means that you have, like, sometimes being a professor is just lonely. It's like you go in, it's like I connect more with my students, in standalone classes because I'm seeing them than I do with my colleagues sometimes. So sometimes just being in a classroom with Pam and Casey and like having kind of a banter back and forth, or when we're doing linked stuff, like having a meeting a month or a meeting every couple weeks, whatever it is, to be like, hey, so what are you noticing? And that kind of touch base, just it's good for us as teachers too. So, what does this make you think about?
I mean, I think I will be interested, but not like fully yet, just
Mm-hmm.
because um I'm not sure. But I think, like you said, I will be interested to see if I could find someone like do the swap thing
Yeah.
with someone with 142 or the 213 with like either accounting or business, even if a
Mm-hmm.
business, because again, like that's the part where students struggle with the finding the applications. And if I feel like if I can talk to their faculty about it, and if we can do like some little project with that, like I think that might help
Yeah. So then, like a first step could be like you may not even need to. We know there's a little bit of overlap for both semesters with those courses, like at least 30 or 40 or 50, I think, maybe 70. Now my brain's spacing. It's in the data. But what you could do is you could say go down to the people who teach English 111 and do any of these people look familiar? Like, have I met them before? Do you know any of the people teaching that course? And if so, you go, hey, so what's a weird part of your teaching or whatever? Or like, I'm teaching this. Is there any way you'd be willing to like come hang out for a day? And if you want to see what learning communities look like when they're co-taught or anything like that, like you're always welcome to drop in on the math English one, even though we're going to be doing it as a linked one in the fall. So I'll probably be there. Like we'll probably co-teach it some of the time, but we're not like required to if we're doing it linked. So but that might be like as we get it developed, we could walk you through the and show you kind of how we're laying out the materials too.
So what are you guys doing right now?
So right now, so up to this point, we were doing fully integrated.
But right this semester?
This semester, we don't have anything in the spring.
Oh,
We
okay.
tried doing 151 to 187, and we get like 13 or 14 students enrolled, and that's not. So we did that a couple semesters, and we're like, their schedules are busy, and it wasn't anchoring enough. So it's also one of the reasons why I'm kind of interested in exploring the other courses, or just looking at like I think one of the reasons I was talking with Shannon about a possible like English 101 and 151 or an English 102 151 in the spring, because trying to do 187 in the spring didn't have enough numbers. So it was tough. Like people, like students who were in the LC enjoyed it, but then they didn't need the next class a lot of the times. And people who had to take 187 may have been done with the other course already. So it was a little harder to find the lineup.
Yeah.
Or just didn't want to be together that much. It's always interesting. But marketing was also down. Again, that was a part of it. So, but yeah, if so, your next step could be like in whatever class or area you think you're interested in or you think might be fun, or if you just know someone else on campus in a different division and you're like, they teach fun things. You could like it can start a lot of different ways. And so when it's on the professor swap, like common intellectual experience, there's no need to even look at enrollment because it's just something you guys kind of figure out and have fun with. And we know it benefits students. It gives you a reason to kind of think forward. And it's a lot easier to kind of manage. Like you can plan those kind of things like in a week if you really need to. It's optimal to start sooner. As far as if you it usually takes, if you're going to do a full-time learning community or a fully integrated or fully linked learning community, we usually like to know that you're trying to, and who the people, what the team is, the teacher team, by the first week of March, if you want it for the following spring. So, like, if you were going to try and do a full learning community next spring, we'd want to know in the next month or so, and try and get you lined up with a teaching partner. Though some of the details can still be fuzzy, it's okay. If it's for spring, if it's fall to fall, it's like the first week of October, kind of it's early mid semester basically. And so we always try and have a year out for the official ones, because we want to make sure they're in the scheduling gets what they need, and that those kind of can lock in. But if you're trying to just explore, you can explore by kind of talking with people you're already having fun hanging out with, and see what kind of weird combinations you can come up with, right?
Yeah.
Were you here when they did like the unnatural disasters stuff?
I mean, I think I heard that you guys were doing something, but I don't.
It was one of those things where none of the students had to be in any of the same classes, but they kind of had this thing that they aimed at, and then an event at the end of the semester. So if you and another teacher kind of, once a month were like plugging a certain theme or topic, and then at the end of the semester you had your students kind of come together with their different ways of approaching that topic for the class, and you guys had kind of a TED Talk style interview or something like that, that's what it could be. Like, there's all kinds of options that can be really good for students as far as it goes. But yeah, so there's a lot here. There's a lot of possibilities here is really what it is. And that can feel a little messier than just aiming for a fully integrated LC, but you can also get your feet wet a little bit too. So if you I'm happy to help try and connect you with other teaching partners, and I'm going to be doing a couple brown bag type workshops for integrating assignments and some stuff, and so I'll probably do those like Friday afternoons is what I think it's going to be. But that could be an opportunity to, assuming people show up, opportunity to see who's interested in kind of a low scale integration kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. What other questions does this leave you with?
I think that's it.
Okay.
Again, I just kind of wanted to get more information on how you guys do it and what does it look like. But again, I think those are kind of get an idea.
The only other thing we haven't talked about that I can think of is how people get paid for it. You don't, so right now, we think what it's going to be is that you basically, if you choose to do a learning community, it usually will take the cap of the highest course. And so, but I don't know that affects you guys that much. And so, but you'll get, if it's a linked learning community, it looks like we're somewhere around like 1 or 1.2 like credit hours bonus, basically, as far as load goes, load equivalent. And if it's a fully integrated, you get, I think it's 2 credit hours load a semester, as far as it goes. And you can get that, I think, either as a stipend or kind of a distributed thing.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
Right now I'm teaching my 141, right? It's 3 credit hours. So I will get 2.
So you get 3, and then you'd get 2 more for fully integrating with the other course. But the expectation is that you're kind of co-teaching, so you're present in the other course. We used to do full double loading, where you get, and so we just had to shift because budget things this year, but also trying to make it more systematic. So the idea is that it doesn't take double the work to co-teach. It takes a little less than double the work. And so if you and me were doing a learning community next spring, both 3 credit hour courses, if we did it fully integrated and the enrollment made, it'd be set by probably your cap, because mine's like 22. Don't judge me. People fought for it. It's a thing. But Pam's mad at me. No, anyway, we'd do it at like your normal cap, and we'd basically get 5 credit load, but we'd be expected to be there for the full, both classes. Yeah. And there's
so then what is the time commitment for the student? Like when they come to both, like if it was like the 151 and the one and your English, when students sign up in the fall.
So they have to be there for both classes fully.
So then
It's a
like,
normal, for them, it feels like a normal enrollment that is just made smoother by having both teachers there the whole time.
so then like if the 151, right? Like right now, my 141, let's say I go from 10 to 11:15.
So then I would
Then they
start
will
at like
come back.
11:30,
Okay.
or I would start at
That next.
8:30, 9:45. We would decide like how we want to stack it.
Mm,
And so it would be, and so if it's a, and it could be something like you do in person and I do hybrid, or we both do in person or whatever. So those,
yeah.
but yeah, so we decide what schedule we want, and we stack it and try and make it useful for the students.
Okay.
They come the whole time. If it's double, if it's fully integrated, we would come the whole time, and we'd get paid basically, instead of getting paid, um, 6 credit hours for being there for both classes. We're getting 5 credit hours because we're present, but you're not having to do the grading for the second class, and I'm not, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit. We took a long time trying to figure out how to balance the teaching load and compensation in the fall. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's still, you get to have fun co-teaching with people and then the linked one is you aren't really expected to be there in all the classes, but you guys should be co-planning, and you're getting basically a credit hour more instead of 2 more. So you get a load of 4 for linking and a load of 5 for a 3 credit hour course for integrated. But
Okay.
cool. Well, if anything else comes up, questions about WISE, let me know. Thanks for being willing to hang out. I know you taught a lot today, so I'm like, I really appreciate it. That was
I have a long day today.
yeah.
My two of my classes had low enrollment, so it got